Welcome to today's edition of the Daf Yomi. We're doing Takte Menachot Daf 90 Amud B. If one committed to supply fine flour at 3 seah for a seller, and its market price decreased until it stood at 4 seah for a seller, he must supply fine flour at 4 seah for a seller. The reason for this halacha is that the temple treasury is at an advantage. In the latter case, the merchant ends up providing the temple with a greater quantity of flour than had initially been intended. Consequently, the temple has more flour than it requires. The extra amount is referred to as surplus libations, and it is sold in order to purchase supplementary offerings. The Gemara comments, it is taught in a Braita in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Chia bar Yosef, and is taught in another Braita in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan. The Gemara elaborates, it is taught in a Braita in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Chia bar Yosef. These overflows of measuring vessels, what would be done with them? Beiruze midos halalu mehayu osin bahen. What would be done with the overflow liquid of measures? If there was another offering available, this liquid would be sacrificed with that offering, and if it was left overnight, it would thereby be disqualified. If there was no other offering available and it had not yet been left overnight, it would be used for the repletion of the altar, i.e. it would be sold, and the proceeds from the sale used for the purchase of burnt offerings, with the highs going to the priest. The halacha is in accordance with the ruling of the Braita, and that's from the Rambam Sefer Avoda Hilchot Maaseh Kabbalah 2:10-11. They are gathered, and if there is another offering to be sacrificed that day, the priest sacrifices liquid with it as part of its libations. And if there is no other offering that day, and instead the overflows were left overnight without being sacrificed, they are disqualified by being left overnight. And if the overflows were not sacrificed with another offering, and were not disqualified for being left overnight, they are sold, and the proceeds from their sale are used to purchase animals to supplement the offerings of the altar. And these supplementary offerings, what form do they take? They are burnt offerings. Their flesh is entirely burnt on the altar to God, and the hides are given to the priest. It is taught in a Braita in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan. In the case of one who accepts upon himself to supply fine flour at 4 seah for a seller, and his market price stood at 3 seah for a seller, he is required to fulfill his commitment and supply fine flour at 4 seah for a seller. If one committed to supply fine flour at 3 seah for a seller, and his market price decreased until it stood at 4 seah for a seller, he must supply fine flour at 4 seah for a seller. The reason for this halacha is that the temple treasury is at an advantage, and it is to this latter case that we referred when we learned in the Mishnah. The surplus libations were sold, and the proceeds used to purchase supplementary offerings of the altar. The Mishnah. All offerings, whether communal or individual, require libations. The offerings that require libation are animal burnt offerings, including the sheep of a woman after childbirth and the ram of a high priest, and the peace offerings. This requirement applies to both communal and individual offerings. Rambam Sefer Avoda Hilchot Maaseh Kabbalah 2:2. A meal offering and a wine libation, except for the firstborn offering. Bechor, the firstborn offering. The male firstborn of cattle, sheep, or goats belonging to a Jew is sacred from birth and must be given to a priest to be sacrificed in the altar in the temple. Its meat is eaten by the priests and their families. See Numbers 18:17-18. If a firstborn animal develops a physical blemish that is qualified as being sacrificed as an offering, it may be slaughtered and eaten like any other non-sacred kosher animal. Nevertheless, it still must be given to a priest. It is prohibited to intentionally inflict a disqualifying blemish on a firstborn animal. Furthermore, a firstborn animal may not be used for any mundane purpose, even if it is blemished. It is prohibited to work the animal, and its fleece may not be used. The animal tithe offering, Maaseh Behema, animal tithe. On 3 occasions each year, the owner of a herd of kosher animals was required to gather all the animals born during the preceding period into an enclosure and let them out one by one. These animals were passed under the shepherd's rod, Leviticus 27:32, every 10th animal is marked with red paint to indicate that it was sacred. The animals so designated are called animal tithe. If the marked animal is fit to be sacrificed, it is brought to Jerusalem, where it is sacrificed and eaten by its owner. If fewer than 10 animals remain, he adds those to the animals from the next tithing season, and they are tied together. All those that already passed under the rod of the individual, counting them, is even those that were merely available to do so are all exempt, and they are not tied subsequently. The details of the halacha of animal ties are elucidated in Bechorot, chapter 9. And the Paschal offering, the sin offering, and the guilt offering. One does not bring libations with the sin offering, the guilt offering, the firstborn offering, the animal tithe offering, or the Paschal offering. The reason is that the verse states, in fulfillment of a vow, clearly uttered or as a gift, and these offerings are not brought due to a vow or as a gift, one does bring libations and wine for festival, peace offerings, and burnt offerings of appearance. And that's in Ram Sefer Voda, Hechad Ma'aser Kabbalah 2:2-3, which with libations are not brought. But the exception to this exemption is that the sin offering of a leper and his guilt offering do require libations. Although libations are generally not brought with sin offerings and guilt offerings, the exception to this are the sin offering and guilt offering of a leper, which are accompanied by libations. Rambam Sefer Voda, Hechad Ma'aser Kabbalah. The main reason that sin offerings and guilt offerings do not require libations is that these offerings are brought to atone for specific transgressions and therefore should not be of superior quality, as stated by Rabbi Shimon in the Braita cited on Sota 15a. Accordingly, since the sin offering and guilt offering of a leper do not come to atone for sin, they should include libations like other offerings. Rambam's commentary on the Mishnah. The sages taught a Braita that derives each of the rulings of the Mishnah from verses that state that the requirement to accompany animal offerings with the sacrifice of libations. The Torah states, and you will make a fire offering to the Lord, a burnt offering or sacrifice in fulfillment of a vow clearly uttered, or as a gift on your festivals, to make a pleasing aroma to the Lord of the herd or of the flock. And he who brings his offering to the Lord shall sacrifice a meal offering of a tenth of an eighth of fine flour mixed with a quarter hin of oil, and wine for a libation, a quarter hin. You shall make it with the burnt offering or for the sacrifice for the one lamb. Numbers 15:2-5. The Torah then proceeds to detail the quantity of flour, oil, and wine for a ram and a bull. The verse states, and you will make a fire offering to the Lord. Accordingly, one might have thought that any offering that is raised up on the altar as a fire offering shall require that libations be brought with it, even a meal offering. In other words, a meal offering should require wine libations. The suggestion is not that it should require a meal offering that accompanies libations, as itself is a meal offering, says the Rashba. The verse then states a burnt offering, which teaches that the requirement of libation applies only to animal burnt offerings, but not to meal offerings. If so, from where is it derived that a peace offering requires libations? The verse states a sacrifice. From where is it derived that a thanks offering requires libations? The verse states or sacrifice. The superfluous word or serves to include thanks offerings. One might have thought that I should include even the firstborn offering, the animal tithe offering, the Paschal offering, the sin offering, and the guilt offering. To counter this, the verse states, in fulfillment of a vow clearly uttered, or as a gift. This teaches that an offering that comes in fulfillment of a vow or as a gift requires libations, whereas each of these offerings which do not come in fulfillment of a vow or as a gift, but only as obligatory offerings, do not require libations. The Braita continues, it has been derived then that one should exclude these offerings from the requirement of libations as they are obligatory. Perhaps then I will likewise exclude the obligatory offerings that come on account of the pilgrimage festival, which are sacrificed in the pilgrimage festival. What are these? Burnt offerings of appearance in the temple and festival peace offerings. Generally, people who came to the temple for the 3 pilgrimage festivals would bring with them all their offerings, both those which were obligatory relating to the festival, as well as other vow offerings and gift offerings. The obligatory offerings of the festival include burnt offerings of appearance, which are simply burnt offerings that one must bring when one appears in the temple on festivals, a celebratory festival peace offerings, which are shared by the owners, the priest, and the altar, and may be sacrificed at any time during the festival. In addition, there are gift burnt offerings that one might set aside to express thanks to God or to atone for certain sins, e.g. the violation of a positive mitzvah. Since there is no fixed time for sacrificing these offerings, many people would bring them when they came to the temple for a festival. People would also bring other types of peace offerings, e.g. thanks offerings and gift peace offerings, to increase the joy of the festival, both of which are brought on the 3 pilgrimage festivals. To counter this, the verse states, or on your festivals, which indicate that any offering that comes to your festivals, even if it's obligatory, requires libations. It has been derived then that one should include even these festival offerings despite the fact that they are obligatory. Perhaps then I will likewise include the goats in offerings, brought as part of the additional offerings on the festival. Since they come as obligatory offerings on the pilgrimage festival, the counter is the verse states in the continuation of that passage, and when you make a young bull as a burnt offering, Numbers 15:8, and proceeds to state the requirement to bring libations with it. Now the requirement to bring libations with the young bull was already included in the general requirement to bring libations with any fire offering, as stated in the beginning of that passage. And why then was it singled out and mentioned explicitly? This is in order to equate all other offerings to it, teaching that the requirement of libation applies only to offerings similar to a young bull, just as a young bull is distinct in that it can come in fulfillment of a vow or as a gift offering. So too, any offering that comes in fulfillment of a vow or as a gift offering requires libations. The Brisa continues. The verses at the beginning of the passage state, to make a pleasing aroma to the Lord, of the herd or of the flock. What is the meaning when the verse states this? Since in the previous verse it states a burnt offering, I will derive that all types of burnt offerings require libations, and even a bird sacrifices a burnt offering is indicated. Therefore the verse states of the herd or of the flock, which limits the requirement to offerings of animals such as sheep or cattle, but not to burnt offerings. This is a statement of Rabbi Yoshia. Rabbi Yonatan says, this verse is unnecessary as the verse states a sacrifice, and a burnt offering is referred to as a sacrifice. The other commentators explain that Rabbi Shia does not dispute the claim that the bird is not classified as a sacrifice. Rather, Rabbi Shia maintains that one would have thought that the term burnt offering includes all types of burnt offerings, even birds, despite the fact they are not called sacrifices. If so, what is the meaning when the verse states of the herd or of the flock? Since it states with regard to a burnt offering, a person, when he sacrifices from you an offering to the Lord of the animals, of the herd and of the flock, you shall sacrifice your offering, Leviticus 1:2. One might have thought that one who takes a vow by saying, "It is incumbent upon me to bring a burnt offering," without specifying which type of animal he will bring, that he must bring animals of both of these two types, i.e. from the herd and the flock. To counter the verse states of the herd or of the flock, separating two types of the word or, thereby indicating that if he wanted to bring one of them, he may bring just one, and if he wanted to bring two, he may bring two. This concludes the Brisa. The Gemara asks, and according to the opinion of Rabbi Yonatan, why do I need an independent verse to teach that one who takes a vow to bring a burnt offering does not have to bring both types? Didn't Rabbi Yonatan himself say an exegetical principle that whenever the Torah mentions two details together with regard to halacha, it's presumed the halacha is fulfilled even when only one of the details is realized, unless the verse specifies that both details are required by writing the word together in the verse. As sheyifros l'chol hakosov yachtav. There's a fundamental dispute between Rabbi Yonatan and Rabbi Shia with regard to the significance of the conjunction and in the list that appears in the Torah, Rabbi Shia maintained that this indicates that the two terms must come together, whereas Rabbi Yonatan contends that they remain two separate entities that are treated separately, unless the verse adds the word together. Accordingly, when the verse states of the herd or of the flock, the intention is that either one is sufficient, and there should be no need for an independent verse to teach this. The Gemara answers, despite this principle, an independent verse wasn't necessary to teach us, as it might enter your mind to say. That's the end of the Omid. Thank you for listening, and all the best. Bye.